set the historical scene. Let me make it clear at the start that we are not here to celebrate or to glorify war in general or the Civil War specifically. We are here to commemorate an event which eventually impacted the lives of every family in Yates County. Within 12 days of the firing on Fort Sumter in Charleston, 16 Yates County men got on a train, went down to Elmira, joined up with Southern Tier regiments, and they were actually the first to go from Yates County. Second were the Keuka Rifles, and they went as an organized company, as a group. Eventually, 2,100 men from Yates County will go to join the Union cause. One of our speakers here today is George Contant. Like many Civil War buffs, including myself, George's interest in the Civil War started with some old letters found in a trunk in the attic. The letters, which were written by his great-grandfather, who served in the 98th New York Infantry during the war, led to research into his ancestors' service. And that led him to two of his ancestors' brothers, one of whom served in the 33rd New York. George found the story of the 33rd Volunteer Infantry so compelling that he spent 10 years of intense research on the regiment, in which he read over 500 letters and diaries and located over 70 photographs, all of which he put together in his book, Path of Blood, the true story of the 33rd New York Infantry.
On the 19th of April, 1861, 3 days after the attack on Fort Sumter, President Abraham Lincoln issued a call for 75,000 men to come to the nation's rescue. Immediately after this news reached PennYan, a war meeting was called in Washington Hall. A roll was presented and 34 names were obtained. 6 days later, a much larger gathering was held in the evening with bands parading the streets and playing national airs. Resolutions were adopted to raise a whole company of volunteers, and recruits came forward freely. A countywide mass meeting took place. Interestingly enough, the Democratic and Republican committees banded together. Pause. To organize this meeting. That took place on April 27th here. A procession was again led by martial and brass bands, and my figure is 5,000 people attended, listening to stirring addresses by local politicians and dignitaries, and a special finance committee was set up, and this is important, to raise funds to support the families who would be left behind. The company named itself the Keuka Rifles, and on May 9th they assembled at Washington Hall to be inspected and mustered into the service of New York State. You've heard about the election and the officers, so I will not repeat that, but 10 days later orders came to go into training at Elmira, New York. And that day, the Keuka Rifles were escorted to the railroad depot by the PennYan Fire Department and a vast crowd of citizens. The ladies of PennYan presented that company with its own flag, and a copy of the New Testament was given to every member. On their arrival at Elmira, they were quartered in a church, and on the 24th of May, the Keuka Rifles became Company I of the Ontario Regiment.
Among the 2,100 Yates County men who are recognized by that monument out there were 25 African American men from the county. Some were descendants of runaway slaves who stayed locally. One served in the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, which was portrayed in the movie Glory. Having done research on the topic, and here to speak on the role that Black Americans played in the Civil War is Freeman Freeman. Freeman got his name from an ancestor. who, when emancipated from slavery during the Civil War, took on the name Free Man.
Citizens of Yates County, my name is Freeman T. Freeman. I'm honored to be here today on the steps of this courthouse of justice and injustice to talk about the 25 colored men who lived among you and went off to war to fight for your freedom and theirs. Your freedom, because no one person is free until all people are free. Now, to talk about the role of the colored men in the Civil War can be simply stated on one hand. They lived, they fought, and they died. But there's a greater context and circumstances under which they went to war. And those circumstances were more horrific than you can ever imagine. So what did I do for this day? I went to the cemetery to stand among the broken bones and the scattered bodies that were reassembled and brought back here to Lakeview Cemetery for their final resting place. I regard these burial plots as hallowed ground. At their grave sites, I try to conjure up and call forth their spirit, to call forth their courage, and to call forth their bravery. Let's let one man, one colored man, William Maxfield, Private in Company 1, 6th United States Colored Troop, and from Yates County. Let's let him stand in for all colored soldiers. There are no true records of the family he left behind that long time ago when the Underground Railroad brought him here. But we can be assured that escaping from the hated slavery hood, what he had to do, he runned and he runned. He hid by the light of day and runned by the darkness of night. His heart beating faster than the movements of his feet, and yet he still runned and feared the slaveholders' revenge.